When it comes to containing dangerous anomalies, the SCP Foundation is the best of the best. But even then, there are some anomalies out there that, one way or another, can't be easily contained. These are 6 stories about anomalies that, no matter what the Foundation tries, keeps breaking containment. SCP-106, the Old Man. SCP-106 is kept in a sealed container made of lead-lined steel, sealed within 40 layers of identical material, each layer separated by 36 centimeters of empty space. These layers have supports which are spaced at random, and the whole containment room is suspended 60 centimeters away from any nearby walls or floors by powerful electromagnets. This is necessary because of SCP-106's ability to melt through any surface. The Old Man is crafty, and he's patient. He sits completely still in a dormant phase, sometimes for weeks at a time, waiting for his ideal opportunity to escape. One of those opportunities came when a power surge caused a slight lag in the security cameras in SCP-106's cell. During this time, he was able to melt his way out of the first containment cell and into the maze of outer cells. The personnel on duty turned on the floodlights, knowing that bright lights would scare the Old Man into his pocket dimension. But in doing so, they'd made a fatal mistake. Once he was in his pocket dimension, he could reappear anywhere connected to the same wall he just walked through. He disappeared into the outermost wall of his cell. Now he was loose in the building. An alert went out to all staff, warning them of the breach, although this was mainly a formality, as there wasn't much the average researcher could do about it if the Old Man chose them as his prey. While the Foundation set to work repairing the Old Man's cell, a mobile task force mobilized, armed with highly powerful halogen light guns ready to ward him off if he came close to escaping the site entirely. The repairs took several days to complete, and in that time, the Old Man captured 10 Foundation junior agents, dragging them into his pocket dimension where they would be hunted for sport and tortured for what to them felt like years. Only when the cell was repaired could the Old Man be lured back in. This was done by breaking a D-Class personnel's femur and broadcasting his screams over the site public address system. Want to hear more about the horrors of the Old Man, his various tales, and the terrifying mysteries about his origins? You should definitely subscribe to SCP Explained, where we've got the vastest collection of video explanations for classic SCPs anywhere on YouTube. You'll never be able to escape. Unlike SCP-6096, the Guest. This SCP resembles a humanoid figure shrouded in a white sheet, superficially resembling someone in a Halloween ghost costume. This anomaly is normally docile until it picks its victim, but unlike the Old Man, the Guest isn't a sadist and it isn't greedy. It only goes after one person at a time. The problem is, nobody can get in its way. Even the Foundation themselves can't harm it or even stop it from leaving containment whenever it wants. In fact, they'll actually help it. The Guest was brought into containment after an incident where it took a taxi to the home of the Mallion family, walking through the front door, and made 16-year-old Desmond Mallion disappear. It did this by throwing its sheet over him, which led to 30 minutes of screaming before all traces of Desmond were completely gone. When Foundation agents arrived on the scene, the Guest did nothing to stop them from leading it into custody. The Foundation put the Guest in a standard humanoid cell at Site 19 and assumed that was the end of it. That all changed one day when a researcher simply unlocked the cell and opened the door, letting the Guest walk out. An alert sounded that there was a containment breach, but strangely, nobody could do anything about it. Guards lowered their guns. Other personnel used their keycards to let the Guest out of Site 19. Only after the Guest had already left was anyone able to do anything about it. A team was sent out to follow the anomaly. Once they were following it, they felt the effect again. They could simply think about stopping the Guest, but they couldn't act on these thoughts. They simply watched it as it walked to a civilian road, got picked up by a car, and was driven to the closest train station and got on the next train as easily as if it had a ticket. The Guest was eventually tracked to Vancouver, Canada, where it walked into a lecture at the University of British Columbia and made an English professor disappear in front of her entire class. She tried to escape, but the students actually worked together to drag her back into the room, where the Guest threw its blanket over her and she vanished after a 45-minute struggle. After this took place, the Guest calmly followed the SCP Foundation back to its cell. At least with the Guest, you might have some time to escape. That's never the case with SCP-096, the Shy Guy. SCP-096 is a tall, thin humanoid with a large gaping mouth and blank white eyes. Usually it stays in its cell, with its face to the wall or its hands covering its face. Much like the old man and the guest, the shy guy is usually docile, but if anyone, anywhere on Earth, looks at a picture of its face, 096 will become extremely distressed, then fly into a rage. In this state, 096 is completely unstoppable, and no known material has been able to keep it in containment. Once it escapes its cell, nothing can be done to get it back in until it's killed the person who has seen its face, as well as anyone else who happens to see it during the course of its rampage. Thanks to concerted Foundation efforts to scrub all images of the shy guy from the public record, 096 containment breaches aren't very common. When they do happen, they're a disaster. In one infamous incident, a hiker was looking at an old photo taken of him when he was in the mountains many years ago, close to what is believed to have been SCP-096's lair before it was put in containment. The hiker just so happened to notice a tiny gray dot, no more than 4 pixels wide, in the background of the photo. Little did he know that as soon as he wondered to himself what that dot was, he'd signed his death warrant. 096 started barreling towards the man's location, which involved crossing a major highway. It was a bloodbath, with 096 flipping cars and tearing their drivers apart if they even caught a glimpse of its face in their rearview mirrors. The Foundation was able to reach the next town on the road and order the residents to blindfold themselves and stay in place, but that didn't mean the deaths stopped. At the time, the Foundation used specially made scramble goggles and cameras that were meant to distort 096's facial features in real time. This allowed agents to track the creature visually to some degree. This didn't end up working though, as there was a split second of uninterrupted light flow to the retina before the image was fully scrambled. Not enough to be consciously recognized, but enough to trigger 096's rage. Of the 50-man team deployed to recapture SCP-096, only one of them managed to survive, Major Jack Wilford, and only because of tremendous good luck. But even good luck seemingly won't stop the containment breaches of SCP-682, the hard-to-destroy reptile. Perhaps SCP-682 needs no introduction. This omnicidal, extremely intelligent monster who can adapt to any environment is basically one of the Foundation's unofficial mascots at this point. Actual Foundation staff are not super happy about that, to say the least. The official mandate is to destroy this SCP as soon as possible, but the problem is that as of right now, it is impossible. They've tried everything at their disposal, even using other anomalies to kill the creature, but 682's adaptive effects seems to make it immune to even anomalous methods of destruction. The only thing they haven't tried is an atomic bomb, out of the fear of what kind of horrors a nuclear-powered 682 could unleash upon the world on the off chance the bomb didn't successfully kill it. The only containment solution that works at this point is to submerge it in hydrochloric acid, which breaks down its tissues at the same rate that 682 can regenerate them. But this isn't always foolproof. Even with 87% of its body mass dissolved, it can still speak and move with surprising speed and force. 682 has broken out of containment no fewer than 6 times, and the Foundation has been able to stop a further 11 escape attempts. In one instance of a successful containment breach, it was able to fully adapt to the acid bath it was submerged in and managed to drink nearly all of it. Once the tank was sufficiently drained, 682 broke through the glass tank and sprayed a high-pressure stream of acid from its mouth, horrifically maiming the guards meant to keep the monster contained. It quickly consumed them while they were writhing on the ground in agony, which allowed 682 to regenerate more of its body mass that had been melted off. Nearly back at full power, 682 proceeded to wreak havoc over the entire site, killing 4 more researchers in the process. With every person it consumed, it was able to regenerate more of its body until it was almost fully recovered. For obvious reasons, this couldn't be allowed to happen. It took a mobile task force of 10 agents equipped with specialized acid-proof shields a full 24 hours to slow 682 down enough. Eventually, it was dragged back to the backup containment chamber, filled with a slightly different but just as toxic acid compound to stop the creature's body from being able to adapt to it too quickly. As it was restrained and lowered into the tank, 682 was heard growling vague threats against the Foundation and humanity in general before its head was completely submerged and its voice was no longer audible. Our next anomaly won't mutter threats. He'll break out and break in with a winning smile. SCP-1879, the Indoor Salesman. This anomaly isn't just hard to contain, it's impossible to contain. But thankfully, its range of effect is limited to the state of Washington, USA, and its effects make it pretty easy to track. The indoor salesman is a humanoid entity resembling an old-fashioned door-to-door salesman, and who manifests behind random interior doors in a personal residence. He will keep knocking until someone answers, at which point he won't leave until he's made a sale. Trying to get him to leave only causes him to reappear behind different doors within the same residence. In some cases, he's been wounded, but this has only caused him to retreat and vanish behind whatever door he came through. The indoor salesman is incredibly pushy, and the things he tries to sell range from flowers to a thermonuclear warhead. Usually the payments he asks for in return are just as strange, and usually involve some kind of wordplay. In one instance, he asked for just a little of your time, and the person in question disappeared on the spot, only to reappear 12 years later with no memories and seemingly not having aged. In another instance, he asked for the homeowner to give him some sugar in exchange for 220 bananas, and all of the sugar and sugary food in the house vanished. In addition to his anomalous doors, the indoor salesman can also use this apparent wordplay-based reality warping to his advantage to evade capture to deadly effect. In one of the few successful interceptions of an SCP-1879 manifestation, Foundation agents were successfully able to restrain the salesman and keep him from entering through any of the home's doors. They attempted to interrogate him, but he was uncooperative, saying he was close to a deadline and didn't have time to chat. He made his final offer to Agent Rogers, the team leader. "I'll give you something, no money out of your pocket." 3 seconds later, 2,000 coins of various currencies manifested in the pockets, epidermis, and digestive tracts of all subjects at the scene except for the salesman himself. With everyone trying to detain him now dead, he was free to walk through the back door and disappear. Later that day, the salesman manifested in another house down the road, but he demanifested before the Foundation were able to arrive on the scene. But you still have a much better chance of survival when facing the indoor salesman than you do with SCP-1440, the Old Man from Nowhere. This is another one who it's simply impossible to contain, because in order to contain it, you would have had to find a way to stop death itself. Not to be confused with the other Old Man on this list, SCP-1440 is a strange figure. He appears to be a human man in his 80s, dressed in black with a long beard, who carries around a glass cup and a set of playing cards wherever he goes. Though he's very old, he never seems to age, and has looked exactly the same for all of the 50 years the Foundation has been aware of his existence. These are the only man-made objects that seem immune to his anomalous effects on the world around him. You see, the Old Man from Nowhere is compelled to wander the Earth in a very specific pattern. Though he tries to avoid coming into contact with man-made structures, inevitably he will cross paths with them. And any man-made object he spends time near will become fatally destructive to any people in the area. He seems to have no control over this, and has willingly given himself up to the Foundation many times. The Foundation has tried to contain him 5 times at this point, and so far they've never been able to find a way to counter this effect. In one instance, when he was brought to Area 142, 3 of the 4 on-site water purification filters broke down, leading to an outbreak of waterborne pathogens among the staff. In the next 2 days, Area 142's hangar collapsed, killing multiple airmen. On top of all of that, one doctor who had previously been in perfect health died suddenly of simultaneous kidney and lung failure. Eventually, the on-site nuclear device detonated, despite multiple fail-safes, and Area 142 was completely destroyed. But in that time, the Foundation was able to interview SCP-1440 and learn as much as they could about him. He told a story about 3 cruel brothers, 2 who follow him everywhere, and 1 who he keeps searching for but can never find. He warned the doctor interviewing him that the first and second brothers were already behind him, and ended the interview with a cryptic piece of advice. If you play a game of cards against death, the only thing you should never do is win. That was the last thing that was recorded before the nuclear device detonated, leaving Area 142 in ruins, except for, of course, SCP-1440 and his pack of playing cards. Now check out SCP-3640, Escape from the House of Mouse, or SCP Community, 15 Insane Ways to Escape Containment, for more.